Hello all, Rick here with a quick look into the mirror universe at an alternate version of one of our most notable captains, Captain Janeway. There are several different incarnations of the mirror Janeway, from books to games and even a comic, but some of these are not too dissimilar in their portrayal and even complement one another. As with all Mirror Universe characters, however, we see some traits in common with the Prime counterpart, but differences that make them more sinister. In the comic book Mirrors and Smoke, we see an ISS Voyager that was home to many familiar faces and crewed by Terran rebels. In 2371, the ship was part of the Terran rebellion against the Klingon-Cardassian alliance and featured some hull livery denoting it as an Earth vessel. The fact it was named ISS is an indicator in itself that the Terran fleet was still in existence, although they were far more diminished and held only the Sol system at this time. This is already where some of the stories diverge, as in the first Splinter timeline, the Terrans unify into a galactic commonwealth, a more democratic power, and resemble far more the Prime Universe's Federation. But that is a mirror specifically of that splintered reality, and not the one to which this Captain Janeway belongs. In this version, the Terrans struggle against the Klingon-Cardassian alliance too, but upon achieving victory, basically reinstate their empire once more and get back to business as the galaxy's biggest oppressors, as they were in the 23rd century. In this continuity, Captain Janeway and the Voyager are still captured by the caretaker array in the Badlands and hauled to the other end of the Delta Quadrant. However, rather than plot a direct course for home, this Mirror Universe crew decide that they have escaped the Terran conflict and will start a new life as pirates. Voyager is still a superior vessel in this far region, as it was in the Prime reality, but instead of helping people and trying to explore and trade, the crew listen for signs of distress, then descend to plunder. Their primary targets are vessels emitting maydays, or worlds suffering some disaster, and after a year of this, the ship was doing rather well for itself and had earned a reputation as the ill omen it was. In this universe too, Neelix and Kes still came upon Voyager. However, he was in command of a much larger ship, the Baxial, instead of his shuttle, but still a scavenger. He would effectively shadow the ISS Voyager and pick up their scraps from a raid, having something of a rivalry with Janeway, who had proclaimed herself the Pirate Queen of the Delta Quadrant. She was still very much the captain we know from the series, but one that had no respect for any life besides humans, although she continued to value Tuvok, tolerating his constant suggestions to return to the Upper Quadrant and aid the rebellion. Her primary goal was effectively to build a fleet and stand at its head, acquiring as much advanced tech and wealth as possible. In this continuity, the Terran Empire had never encountered the Borg, although the Raven was still assimilated, but Annika Hansen was not. She escaped. Encountering the crew, she imparted her knowledge of the Borg to Janeway, who at first played down the descriptions, but eventually came to see them as a new target. This story ends with her adopting the role of Commodore Janeway and assigning Captain Chakotay to the seized Baxial and heading off in search of Borg technology. There's also an image of Janeway from the Mirror Universe in Star Trek timelines. Although there is not any lore that I could dig up on it, it certainly captures this pirate aesthetic, and I like to assume this is her several more years into her Delta Quadrant journey. Moving into Borg territory would ultimately have set them on a path to home. And this is where the continuity of Star Trek Online actually complements this history, although it is set in the year 2411, skipping over 39 years of lore. But notice that in this image, Janeway has lost her left eye, and by the 25th century, she has a Borg prosthesis resembling Seven of Nines. By this time, the Terran Empire is firmly re-established, and has grown to rival its former power with a mirror Starfleet. Janeway has seemingly returned to the Empire and been promoted to the position of Marshal for her efforts, mirroring the ascent of Prime Admiral Janeway. What's more, the ISS Voyager is still in play, and heavily altered too. Voyager by this time resembles the warship Voyager from the Museum of Kyrian Heritage, which approximated the image based on an aggressive and hostile notion of the ship. Out of universe, this is simply a reference, but in universe, you could say it looks similar because this Voyager did very much as the Kyrians thought it did, so the resulting incorporation of numerous weapons is accurate. Marshal Janeway continued to watch her back, as any Terran in power should, and had numerous contingency plans to protect herself. She had won much favour with the Emperor, and held a spot of high value among her fellows. What's more, it seems her tracking down of the Borg was successful too, judging by her implants, which are more than cosmetic. She had modified her own body with tech, to the extent where she could create a Borg adaptation shield and is capable of assimilating other people, if the need arises. This was used to great effect when she escaped a betrayal from her supposed allies by surreptitiously assimilating their kills and then beaming in a small Borg drone army to her defence. A morbid but pragmatic plan. Eventually, the Marshal goes rogue in command of the ISS Voyager once more, blasting her way out of the Imperial space dock over Terra and setting out as an independent force once again with vows of revenge on her betrayers, effectively returning to the role of an outlaw, at least until she settles her score. Marshal Janeway is cold and ruthless, but seems to still have some level of restraint when it comes to battle, not engaging in wanton slaughter until there's no other choice. Like a true pirate, she would rather cultivate a reputation of fear and let that bring her adversaries to their knees, surrendering without a fight, even though the ISS Voyager is an overly armed and armoured warship of devastating means. A perfect fortress is one that is never attacked out of fear, and a perfect pirate raid ends the minute the prey sees the flag. She is also heavily tactical and analytical, but will not let ethics get in the way of her schemes. She is also still very much addicted to coffee. Thanks for watching the lore on Marshal Janeway and the Pirate Queen of the Delta Quadrant. Let me know if you want me to tackle some other alternate universe versions of characters we know from Trek, or even other iterations of Janeway that do not fit this mirror tale. Until then, I've been Rick, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.